Hey everyone, today we're diving into the ancient city of Eridu, a place that's not just one of the earliest cities in Mesopotamia, but believed by the ancient Sumerians to be the very first city in the world. Imagine that, they saw Eridu as the spot where civilization itself began, a place founded around 5400 BCE. In Sumerian mythology, this city wasn't just any settlement. It was thought to have been created by the gods as the starting point for order on earth. Now, Eridu was more than just a city. It was home to the great god Enki. Enki, known as Ea to the Akkadians, started as a local god of fresh water but evolved into the god of wisdom and magic. He was right up there with the top deities in Mesopotamian mythology, like Anu, Enlil, and Inanna. Because of Enki, Eridu became linked to some of Mesopotamia's most important myths, including stories of an early paradise. Think of it almost like an ancient version of Eden. The Sumerians even believed Eridu was where kingship first came to earth. According to the Sumerian King List, this city was the city of the first kings, a place that once enjoyed a kind of golden age that people looked back on with awe. Later city-states in Mesopotamia saw Eridu as this legendary first city, much like how the Bible describes the Garden of Eden. The city eventually fell into decline though, and by around 600 BCE, it was abandoned, likely due to overuse of the land. Eridu also plays a big role in Sumerian myths, not just as a home for the gods, but as the place where the goddess Inanna came to receive the sacred gifts of civilization, which she then shared with her own city, Uruk. Interestingly, there's still some debate among scholars about which came first, Eridu or Uruk, but the ancient Sumerians were convinced Eridu was the original city. The city's religious significance was huge, even if it didn't hold much political power. Scholar Gwendolyn Leake pointed out that Eridu was never the seat of a dynasty. Instead, it was all about religion and was known as the main sanctuary of Enki, the god of wisdom. Enki shows up in so many Mesopotamian stories, especially in the tales of a massive flood, the same kind of flood that eventually made its way into other flood legends around the world. One of the standout sites in Eridu is the ancient temple of Enki, and this place was rebuilt over thousands of years. The earliest version of this temple was a small mud brick building with an altar and a niche for a statue of Enki. It was really simple at first, but as time went on, it grew and changed. Fun fact, fish bones were found near the altar, which suggests that Enki's favorite meal might have been freshwater fish. Eridu's location in the marshes by the Euphrates River made it closely tied to fresh water, and both Enki and the city itself appear in the oldest versions of the Great Flood story. In the Eridu Genesis, written around 2300 BCE, Enki warns a good man named Utnapishtim, or Atrahasis, to build a boat to survive the flood. Sound familiar? This story is one of the earliest records of a flood myth, and it may have even been inspired by a major flood in the region around 2800 BCE. Later, archaeologists like Leonard Woolley found layers of silt at Ur that seemed to back up the story of a major flood, although it was likely local, not a worldwide event. Eridu was also home to other myths. There's a story about a figure named Tagtug, a gardener who ate from a forbidden tree and was cursed by Enki, almost like a Mesopotamian Garden of Eden story. And there's the tale of Adapa, Enki's son, who was given wisdom but tricked out of immortality, a theme that pops up a lot in Mesopotamian literature, especially with Gilgamesh of Uruk, who desperately sought eternal life. As time went on, Uruk rose in prominence, and Eridu's influence faded. But that shift tells us something interesting about early civilization, that people were moving from smaller rural cities to more complex urban centers. This change is captured in the story of Inanna and the god of wisdom, where Inanna, from Uruk, takes the gifts of civilization from Enki and Eridu. It's a powerful symbol of how Sumerian culture was evolving, with Uruk's thriving trade and commerce overshadowing Eridu's quieter, religious life. And Eridu wasn't just about temples and myths. It was also a major center for trade and culture, buzzing with diverse groups of people and ideas. During its prime, especially under rulers like Ur-Nammu and his son Shulgi, Eridu thrived as a vibrant and proud city, and they had reason to be proud. One of their biggest accomplishments was this massive ziggurat dedicated around 2100 BCE. This wasn't just any structure, it was built with impressive baked bricks, and though only about 30 feet of it remains today, its base alone measures over 150 by 200 feet. It once supported something far grander and really spoke to Eridu's significance. Now, here's an interesting twist. This great ziggurat, which was later rebuilt by Shulgi's son Amar-Swin, has actually been linked to the biblical story of the Tower of Babel. The ziggurat at Eridu has been noted by some historians and archaeologists as having more in common with the Tower of Babel description in Genesis than any structure found at Babylon itself. And it's not just modern scholars saying this. A Babylonian historian named Berossus, who lived around 200 BCE, wrote about Babylon in a way that points more toward Eridu than the Babylon we think of today. His descriptions match Eridu's southern marsh location by the Euphrates and its association with the god of wisdom and fresh water, Enki. Eridu eventually faded away, and by around 600 BCE, it was abandoned for good. The reasons for this aren't completely clear, but it likely came down to one thing: the land couldn't keep up with the needs of the city. According to scholar Lewis Mumford, cities that can't maintain a balanced relationship with the surrounding land eventually decline. Eridu's heavy demand on resources from its large population, combined with the strain of people coming in as pilgrims and merchants, may have been more than the land could handle. It's possible the city was abandoned at times to let the area recover, but by 600 BCE, the land just couldn't support the city anymore. Today, if you visited Eridu, you'd find mostly windswept sand dunes with only traces of what was once there. Not much is left of this once great city that ancient people believed was founded and watched over by the gods.